Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Is the India-China situation improving or deteriorating? And what is the precise situation in Galwan, Depsang, and Pangong Lake? And finally, how effectively is all of this being handled by the government? Those are three key issues I shall raise today with a member of the National Security Advisory Board and the Director General for the Center of Contemporary China Studies, General S.L. Narasimhan. General Narasimhan, on the one hand, we're told that after military level and diplomatic level talks, India and China have agreed to resume disengagement. But on the other hand, we read in the papers that the Chinese have reconstructed the demolished structure in Galwan. The Chinese troops have entered Indian territory in Depsang, and that the Chinese have increased their force levels along the LAC in Ladakh by up to 30%. So is the situation today improving or is it deteriorating?
Thank you, Mr. Karan, for getting me onto this show of yours, and I'm quite privileged to be on this interview. Your question is right in the sense that you need to put a time frame to all the questions that you asked. One thing is that in Galwan, when the statement was made on 15th of June that people have been pushed back, please understand that even today the troops are not, Chinese troops are not on our side of the LAC. That is something I would like to mention. That is one. Second thing, you talked about the people who have been increased in the strength. Again, you look at the time frame between 15th and 22nd. 15th, that incident happened, and so you found there was uncertainty in the entire process of disengagement that had come up at that time. And by the time the 22nd June talks took place, I'm sure some increase would have been there in some of the areas, but I'm sure after 22nd of June that would not be the case. So we need to put a time frame to all these questions and then have a look at it. You will find that things have not deteriorated. If not, the full engagement has taken place. Some effort towards that is on, and this process is likely to continue.
You said a very interesting thing. You said on the 22nd of June, some increase would have taken place of Chinese troops along the LAC compared to 15th June, but since 22nd June, in other words, in the last 4 or 5 days, that increase has diminished.
That is something like what I said, in the sense that when uncertainties take place, it is quite normal for any side to have some reserves. So if the Chinese side has pushed up some numbers, please be rest assured that the Indian side also has built up the counter numbers. So that is something that we shouldn't worry about whether some side is increasing or otherwise, because most of the reports that come talk about what Chinese side is doing. And we have been saying that any build-up that takes place on the Chinese side, equal counter build-up is taking place on our side. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. And actually, this statement of this 30% increase came up sometime around 1st or 22nd, if I remember correctly. Beyond that, I don't think that has taken place.
So, General Narasimhan, as of today, the 26th of June, is the situation improving or is it deteriorating? What is the snapshot picture as of today?
I think the situation is improving, and basically because we need to understand that the kind of aggression that we saw on the 15th of June is not there anywhere. And to some extent, I think the disengagement has taken place between the troops in those areas itself. The process is on. Everybody thought probably on 22nd of June when these talks took place that it will probably happen quickly. But I think these processes do take time. They have to be discussed on ground at each of these points. So I think the process is on, but it is likely to take a bit of time.
Let's look at all three areas of trouble one by one, and let's start with Galwan. This is where on the 15th of June, 20 Indian soldiers were killed by the Chinese. Did this clash happen on Indian territory, on Chinese territory, or on territory that is claimed by both?
You see, this is a question which is absolutely tactical in nature, and the statement that have come out even from the official sources, etc., have indicated that when the party went, led by Colonel Santosh Babu, went there, they found a Chinese tent on the Indian side of LAC. And that is the time when they were pushed out, and that tent was brought down, and our tent was put up. And that is the time the Chinese came up in larger numbers, and that is where it took place. So it could be exactly on that place, or a few meters this side or a few meters that side. That I think shouldn't matter. But the fact of the matter remains, that day we managed to ensure that the Chinese go back to their side.
General Narasimhan, I'm a little confused by your answer. You began by saying that Colonel Santosh Babu had found the tent on the Indian side of the LAC, but towards the end of your answer, you said it might have been a few meters this side or a few meters that side. That suggests it might also have been on the Chinese side of the LAC.
Yeah, the reason why I said that, Mr. Karan, is that, see, when the melee started, it could have started on our side where our tent was pitched. But you knew that hundreds of soldiers were actually milling around in that area. So that in the process of that melee that took place, that melee could have gone on to either side of this, is what I said. But ultimately what resulted in was that the Chinese soldiers were pushed back to their side of the LAC.
There have been several accounts in the paper, sometimes a little varied, sometimes confusing, about the actual clash and how it happened. You're suggesting that the clash began on the Indian side of the LAC, but it might have ended on the Chinese side because people push each other around, which means that this whole thing happened within a distance of 10, 12 meters of either side of the LAC. It was practically on the LAC.
See, it is, as you are aware, Mr. Karan, the LAC is not marked on ground. So it's not like a court, a game court that you have a line is put there and then you measure 5 meters or 10 meters this side. It doesn't work like that on ground in those areas. So it could have been, instead of saying 10 or 12 meters, it could have been even more. But all the same, that the fight could have happened on either side. But finally, when it ended, that there were no Chinese soldiers on our side of the LAC is what I was trying to convey.
That's very clear. Was a Chinese commander killed in this clash, as some reports suggest? Do you have any sense of how many Chinese soldiers were killed?
Firstly, it will be extremely difficult to pinpoint the exact numbers, basically because of one simple reason, that the casualties that were evacuated, how many of them succumbed to their injuries in the hospitals will not be known to us under any circumstance. It will be known only to the Chinese. So one of the things that we need to understand is, it is the numbers that we can't fix a total number, to put a number to it. But what we get to understand is that there was substantial amount of casualties to the Chinese side, which could be more than what we suffered. And that is the way we see it.
And would that include a Chinese commander?
Possible, very possible that the Chinese, most of the reports are indicating that the Chinese battalion commander also was killed in that action.
Now, the critical question for many, General Narasimhan, is what is the situation in Galwan today? The Economic Times and the Indian Express say that the Chinese have reconstructed the tent that Colonel Babu demolished. The Business Standard says that the Chinese have established a camp 1 kilometer inside Indian territory near something called Patrolling Point 14. Can you confirm these newspaper reports?
See, newspaper reports are newspaper reports. I don't know where they get their information from. But as far as we are concerned, the LAC is fine, and maybe that structure which you see on the, again, the problem that comes up is where we interpret the LAC. It is not a line that has been drawn on ground, and there are lines available with the government. They are aware as to where the line is. So the issue that comes up is we are actually nitpicking on these issues. Should we nitpick is a question that we need to ask ourselves. The larger question, I mean, we can go to the other areas which you are mentioning, but the larger question that we need to look at is that the Chinese are trying to, they've come in some numbers and they're trying to put pressure on the line of actual control. That is what we need to look at and deal with. These individual places, nitpicking, etc. is fine, but the larger picture is something that we need to look at.
But you were saying something about the structure and then you interrupted yourself. Has that structure that Colonel Babu demolished been reconstructed?
No, I don't think so. There was one white spot which is being shown on all these satellite photographs put by the media. That is open to interpretation.
One more newspaper report that has attracted a lot of attention is that it's been said that the Indian side, the Indian army, has no camps or posts on the Galwan River Valley. And secondly, it said that India has also agreed to create a no man's land or a buffer zone on the Indian side of the LAC. And many top diplomats, including Shyam Saran, a former foreign secretary, have commented that a buffer zone on Indian territory, if it exists, is actually a gain for China.
You see, this buffer zone thing, I don't know where they got it from as far as the report is concerned. We don't know. At least I am not aware of any of these, any of the buffer zones, etc., being created. So this is a question that probably you need to ask whosoever has reported that. They'll probably tell you as to where they got it from.
In other words, you haven't heard anything about buffer zones, whether on Indian territory or Chinese territory.
I have not heard about it, yes.
One more question about Galwan before I come to Depsang and Pangong Lake. Since the 15th of June, at least on 3 occasions, the Chinese have claimed that Galwan is Chinese and always has been. And if I understand correctly, the Chinese ambassador made a very similar comment to PTI in the interview he gave them yesterday. In response, when the MEA spokesperson Anurag Srivastava was asked about this, he said that the historical situation in Galwan is clear. He said that China's claims are exaggerated and untenable. And thirdly, he said China's claims do not accord with China's own past position. But at no time did Mr. Srivastava say Galwan is Indian. Those are 3 simple words, but he never said it. Do you not find that strange?
You need to understand the lay of the ground there to say that. See, Galwan is a river. It starts from almost near across the LAC and then comes through the line of actual control and then joins at Shiok. To understand this, we need to understand where the claim lines were in 1960. And I'm sure Chinese know where the claim lines were. And if Chinese were feeling that Galwan Valley is theirs, I mean, they were not doing any patrolling, anything in that area till now. So the issue that comes up is, I fully support what Mr. Anurag Srivastava mentioned. The Chinese know exactly where that line of actual control and their claim line is, and that is not whole of Galwan. So that they should understand. That is the point I think Mr. Anurag was also mentioning.
That's an interesting answer you're giving. The Chinese do, if I infer from your answer correctly, own and control part of Galwan, but not all of Galwan. And I presume that's why Mr. Srivastava couldn't categorically say Galwan is Indian, because part of Galwan is Chinese.
No, part of Galwan is part of what they claim. You can't say it is Chinese. It is the claim line I am talking about. The claim line and the LAC is part of Galwan. But as far as we are concerned, the Galwan is ours.
In which case, if Galwan is ours as far as we understand, why did Mr. Srivastava not say Galwan is Indian and end the matter? He went into textual analysis, whereas 3 simple words, Galwan is Indian, would have ended the matter.
See, it is like this. That is an official statement. I am sure as an official spokesperson, he is entitled to say what he is supposed to say. The issue that comes up is, the facts are clear on ground. The Indian armed forces know exactly where the line of actual control lies. They patrol up to that area and they don't go beyond into Chinese territory, which again was mentioned by Mr. Srivastava. So we are not actually here to dissect Mr. Srivastava's statement, I presume. But what we need to understand is where that line is and what is happening there. And it is somewhere, the understanding is that the claim line is part of Galwan. Part of Galwan is in the claim line, but that doesn't mean that Galwan is theirs. Galwan is in our territory.
Okay. China claims part of what is ours, but it is still ours. Is
Yes.
that correct understanding?
Yes.
Let's then, General Narasimhan, come at this point to what happened in Pangong Lake. Now, here it's reported that the Chinese have built defensive structures, it said between fingers 4 and 8, and as a result, India cannot access some 50 square kilometers where previously it was patrolling. Can you confirm how massive and large or what these defense structures are, and how much of an obstacle are they?
See, this again, I don't know where this information comes from to the people who are reporting these. Everybody understands there was a tussle there on the 5th of May, and then the Chinese had taken up a position, and people have earlier also mentioned conflict bunkers have come up, this thing has come up, that thing has come up. I don't think any of that is true. So the issue that comes up is there may be something that they would have done for digging, etc., to protect themselves. That is what I think is happening there. To say that, you know, they have constructed a whole lot of defense structures, etc., may be incorrect.
This is very important. You're saying that the reports in the papers that the Chinese have constructed massive defense structures. The Economic Times at one point even said a whole marina has been built. You're saying this is not true.
What I'm saying is I'm not wanting to comment on what a particular paper has reported or otherwise. That is their prerogative to report what they want to report. But what I am saying is I think this is an exaggerated picture that is being put up.
That's very clear, sir. The reports of defense structures, whether massive or small, are exaggerated.
Yes.
Thirdly, let's come to the Depsang claim. Here it's reported that after 15th June, the Chinese have intruded into Indian territory. Various newspaper reports say they've got to Raki Nala, others say they've got to Jeevan Nala, one even says they've got to a place called White Junction. And it's suggested that this could threaten the Darbuk Shah of Daulat Beg Oldie Road. It might even threaten India's airstrip at Daulat Beg Oldie. Are these reports confirmed or are these also exaggerated?
I think they are also very exaggerated. I mean, I think all these people need to make a visit to that place to check it out. Sometime later, I presume, sometime if they can, and if they get the permission to go, I think they themselves will realize. I think their reportings are all exaggerated on Depsang Bulge.
Just to sum up, because I think what you said is so important, you're saying that the reports about the Chinese entering Indian territory in Depsang up to Raki Nalla or Jeevan Nalla or Y Junction and threatening the road as well as the airstrip, these, as you said, are very exaggerated. You also said reports about defense structures, whether big or small in Pangong Lake, are exaggerated. You said you don't know where the press have got these reports from. And similarly, you also said that reports that the Chinese have reconstructed that tent that Colonel Babu demolished in Galwan are also inaccurate. I've summed correctly.
Okay. On the Depsang Bulge, I stand by what I said. On the Pangong So, I stand by what I said, that the claims that they made that huge defense structures have come up, concrete defense structures have come up, that is not the correct thing. That is exaggerated. On PP14, which you talked about, the satellite pictures show some kind of a one, I think white or a pink kind of a spot is something which is shown on the satellite picture. That is, I think, a process of disengagement that will get sorted out. So that is the reason I mentioned. Yes, there was a build-up on the Chinese side. That is the reason I also said that instead of nitpicking on each of these locations or any other location, we need to actually look at the larger picture of Chinese having done this and then look into it.
I will come to the larger picture because I think it's critical. I'm not avoiding it. But just so there's clarity, am I right in believing you said that reports that the Chinese have reconstructed the tent Colonel Babu demolished are also wrong or inaccurate or exaggerated?
No, that is visible on the satellite picture. I mean, that is something which I am not going to say yes or no on this. Basically, because if this is a process of disengagement, that I am sure the ground forces will automatically handle it at their level.
So that tent may have been reconstructed. To that you can't say yes or no. We just don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. So the correct answer
I am sure the government and the armed forces will know. I don't know that.
That's perfect, sir. The correct answer regarding the tent and whether it's been reconstructed is you just don't know. General Narasimhan, let's come at this point to the bigger picture, because I think that might help try and understand what is actually behind the Chinese behavior. Whether you look at Galwan, Depsang or Pangong Lake, to many it seems that the Chinese are now trying to establish actual physical control over territory over which previously they only had a claim. In other words, many of the disputed areas of the LAC in Ladakh, the Chinese are now actually taking over and making their own.
Firstly, I'm not sure whether you're saying that they are taking over is something which is correct. Because now if the disengagement process has been agreed to and it is going on, I think this taking over will not actually hold good. The second point is that on the Darbuk Shiok DBO road, it was in the making for a number of years, and it is on very clearly on our side of the territory, and so I don't think that they had any objection to that. I think the other infrastructure that we are creating well within our territory, well within our side of the LAC, that seems to have probably worried them. To that extent, I am sure some Chinese diplomats also tweeted on this. So this is something I think, having done the infrastructure first on their side, when we were creating an infrastructure that was going closer to the LAC, I think that was actually not very palatable to them. I think that is what actually triggered this.
So your belief is that whatever we've seen, whether in Galwan, Depsang, Hong Kong, Ang Lake, is triggered by Chinese apprehension or suspicion or concern about new additional infrastructure that we're creating on our side.
That's right.
Why would they be worried about this infrastructure? What do you think they fear or are apprehensive of?
You see, if it is something going closer to the line of actual control, I think they tend to get worried, because in fact that question should be posed to them as to why they are worried about it. So that is something they should be able to answer. But I think the answer to this lies in the fact that if you are creating infrastructure closer to the line of actual control, they get a little uncomfortable about it. And also the patrolling pattern. They were also opposing some of the patrols going to our limit of the LAC. So that also, I think, was something which they were opposing to. And these two are the incidents that I think triggered all this.
When you say they were also concerned about the patrolling pattern, are you suggesting that India was patrolling further and deeper than previously and that this concerned the Chinese?
No. You see, the issue is that when you go up to the LAC on patrolling, what happens generally, when their patrols come up to the LAC, there is always a caution that both the sides take, that you don't overstep into each other's territory. So this is something that we have strictly been following. They have also been following. I don't deny that fact. So whenever such patrols go, there is always some kind of objection or some kind of opposition to that. So that is what I was trying to mention.
Now, India wants restoration of the status quo back to what it was in April. But given the Chinese are reported, I know that these reports are questionable, are reported to have built structures on Indian territory, given that they're reported to have moved up to 30% more forces to the LAC, how likely is it that negotiations can lead to status quo ante?
I would like to take your mind back to Samdurungchu. I'm sure you also realize how much time it took to send them, to get into a solution in that area. So I would suggest that we shouldn't rush to the conclusions whether this disengagement will work or otherwise. I think we need to give the process a chance, and we need to be a little patient on that. I get a feeling that the disengagement process, if what we have heard from ADGPA and all when they put out that day, if that process is on, it will go through, and we need to be a little patient about it. It may take a little time. That is the way I see it.
Samdurungchu, which you mentioned, took 7 years to resolve. Are you suggesting that this could take something as long?
No, I don't suggest that at all. That is what you are suggesting. What I am trying to say is we should not be very impatient about it, is what I was suggesting. And when this talks took place on 22nd of June, then even before 22nd of June, people were questioning, should we talk? The first level of talks have failed. Disengagement process didn't take place after 15th, etc., etc. So what I am trying to say is, I am not willing to put a timeline of 7 years or 7 days. What I am trying to say is this disengagement process, as it has been agreed to by both the sides, should be given a chance. We should be careful. We should be careful in monitoring it. We should be careful in looking into the aspects of what should be done in this disengagement. But I think we should give this process a chance, and we should have a little patience.
If at the end, and I'm not putting a timeline on it either, but if at the end, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 or whatever, negotiations do not lead to the outcome that we want, status quo ante, would you accept that at that point, India has only two options, either to militarily push the Chinese or accept a fait accompli?
You see, we will come to the bridge when we have to cross it. Because that is the point you are trying, that your question is based on the premise that they are not going to work. And I am sure people in the government and people in the armed forces are seized of the possibilities of either it is succeeding or not succeeding. I am sure they are planning for it. I think we should leave it to them to handle this.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick break at that point. When I come back, I want to turn to that second critical question. How effectively is this situation being handled by the government of India? We'll be back in a moment's time. Welcome back to a special interview for The Wire. My guest is a member of the National Security Advisory Board and the Director General of the Center for Contemporary China Studies, General S.L. Narasimhan. General Narasimhan, as you know, there's been a lot of criticism of the way the Indian government has handled the situation. For weeks to begin with, it was silent, it had nothing to say. Then there was a period when people felt that different ministers were saying different things and the messaging was confused. Now, once again, we're in a period where people think the situation is deteriorating and the government seems silent all over again. How can you convince the audience that this is being effectively and properly handled?
You see, I do understand where the question comes from. The issue that we need to look at is the government is handling it is a thing that is a given, because I don't think any government can say that, no, I'm not going to handle this issue. This is going to be paramount for any government. I am sure the government has handled it extremely well. Similarly, the armed forces on ground are the ones who will be more concerned about this. I am sure they are also handling it reasonably well. The sense I want to give is that we are all actually groping in speculation, and so therefore you get to have these feelings coming up that the government is handling it or armed forces are handling it. I would like to put this to rest by saying that government position, I am sure they understand, they have calculated it, and they will deal with it with their counterparts whenever and whichever way it is required. I think we need to place the trust in both the government and the armed forces to do their job. And we'll leave it to the professional judgment of the armed forces to handle the ground situation, and we should support them.
So you said, if I understood correctly, that we are groping in speculation because we don't really know. But that apart, you believe the government and the armed forces are handling it well, and you ended by saying we should place our trust in the government and armed forces.
Yeah, you're right, in the sense that the word, probably I chose the wrong word of groping in speculation, basically because that is what generally the media has been doing for a very long time, that they've been actually speculating and getting information here and there which is corroborated, non-corroborated, all sorts of things are coming up. So that is the reason I said we are groping in speculation. But the government, I am sure, would have worked out its stance, and I am sure they are dealing with their counterparts, and the armed forces are dealing with their counterparts in the way they are supposed to be.
The reason why the media is groping and getting information from here and there is because the media is not being informed by the government what is actually happening. Do you think better, clearer, more strategic communication would have helped the government's presentation of its own case? And it would have made the country more informed. Do you think the government should have actually been more upfront rather than leaving it to uninformed, unnamed sources, which is what the media is relying upon at the moment?
See, I think periodically the statements have been coming. I think our impatience in between these statements which are coming up is also a reason why we are doing this. Whenever the meetings took place, the statements were put out. Whenever the disengagement process took place, the statements were put out. So this is something that the government does periodically, that we need to understand. I think we are a little impatient to wait till the next statement that comes up, and so we start looking into other information that comes up. I think let us play it in a manner that it supports the hand of the government also at this time. The government is also facing COVID, they're facing this issue, they're facing a number of other issues. So I think we need to place the faith in the government and also in the armed forces, as I said earlier.
Let me take up one particular point of concern. It actually became quite a controversy when it happened last Friday, exactly a week ago. I refer to the Prime Minister's statement delivered on television Friday night. His exact words were, "Na koi wahan hamari seema mein ghus aaya hai, aur nahi koi ghusa hua hai." In English, that means neither has anyone intruded across our border, nor is anyone intruding. Now, the media points out that the first half is wrong because Galwan happened on the Indian side, and the second half is wrong because the construction or whatever activity is happening in Pangong between fingers 4 and 8 is again on territory we believe is Indian. So how do you explain what to many looks like an error made by the Prime Minister?
Firstly, I don't know whether I don't think it's right to say the Prime Minister made an error. Second thing is, I'm sure you also looked at the PIB release that came up next day, which explained exactly as to what the Prime Minister meant. So I don't think why we are speculating this even beyond that.
Can I point out the problem with the PIB press release the next day? It edited in half what the Prime Minister said. It left out that first half, na koi wahan hamari seema mein ghus aaya hai. It left it out completely as if he hadn't said it. But he said it on TV and the country heard it and it's there on record. So the PIB, in editing out half of what the PM said, actually ended up confirming to people the PM made a mistake. Otherwise, why edit it out?
But I don't think that is the way to see this. I think it clearly said, the PIB information also clearly said that the Prime Minister meant about Galwan with reference to the 15th of June incident, which I also explained in the first half of our interview, that even though that tent was there when Colonel Babu went there on our side, after the event was over on the 15th of June, they were pushed back. And that is the context that we need to keep in mind.
Now, the problem, General Narasimhan, is that the Chinese have jumped on the Prime Minister's statement to prove that China is right and India was wrong. The editor of the Global Times first tweeted, and I'm quoting, PM Modi said China didn't intrude into Indian territory. Then 2 days later, the paper in, I believe, a leader said, Mr. Modi understands his country cannot have further conflict with China, so he is also making an effort to cool tensions. Doesn't it seem as if Mr. Modi's statement created confusion in India? Many veterans, many diplomats were deeply concerned on our side, but in China, it's given them great comfort.
You see, Chinese are welcome to think what they want to think. That is not what we should be worried about. And you are talking about Hu Xiqin's statement. His own statement was deleted by his own paper sometime later in an occasion. So I don't think we should give credence to what Chinese are thinking about. Chinese will think whatever they want to think. So what we should be clear is that what the Prime Minister mentioned about that day was with relation to Galwan, and with relation to Galwan, it was correct to say that on that night after the incident was over, the Chinese were sent back to their side of the LAC. And that is the way we should see it.
Looking at the overall relationship between India and China, where does this leave the belief that many in India had that Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping had a special bond, a special chemistry? Did we in India get a little taken in by talk of the Wuhan spirit or the success of Mamallapuram?
I don't think we should see it that way either. See, each of these meetings do have a plus point of each leader wanting to convey his viewpoint or convey his viewpoint or convey his positions on many issues, and it helps to do it in a little informal manner because you're not bound by a proper agenda, moving around those points, etc. So this has its own point. To say that probably Indians were taken in is an incorrect thing to do, basically because on the ground what was happening, the information was coming and the information was being processed and the information was being taken care of, and that is how you find a quick build-up of troops. Whenever the other side built up, we were able to build up those troops. So to say that the government was not handling it or Indians were taken in by that informal meetings, etc., will be incorrect. Informal meetings do serve a particular purpose of, in an informal setting, to convey certain things to each other. I am sure that would have been done by both the leaders. We should take it at that. And to extrapolate to say that the Indians were taken in by this will be incorrect.
Now, General Narasimhan, there were reports in newspapers, both in February and in April, that intelligence had alerted the army about movements by the Chinese on their side of the LAC. And it seems, according to newspaper reports, perhaps these intelligence reports were not given the credibility or credence they should have been. Secondly, there are also reports that the army delayed annual march maneuvers or exercises because soldiers got COVID. And separately, there are reports that the army in the end got taken by surprise. How do you respond to this collection of reports about intelligence and about the army being taken by surprise?
So my problem with that question is, people seem to have just guessed that information had come and nobody had taken action on it. I don't know where they get that kind of feeling from. I also read in the papers that because of COVID, the exercise got cancelled, etc., and so that the troops were not actually be available. Both I feel is wrong, because I'm sure when these informations come, they go through a process of proper vetting and proper analysis. and action is taken as per that is required. Second is, irrespective of whether the exercise was there or not, there were no, I would say, shortage of troops as some people are trying to imply. There was no shortage of troops in that area. When any kind of troops were required, they were fed into that area. That's why we maintain right from the word go that wherever the PLA built up, we built up an equal and counter build up. And that is true.
I get the feeling that there are a lot of reports put out by the Indian press. I won't name individual papers, but a lot of papers are responsible for reports which are either speculative and not true, but Chinese troop movements or Chinese developments and structures on Indian territory. And equally, I get the feeling you are saying there are a lot of press reports either about intelligence not being acted upon or the army not being able to carry out exercises because soldiers got COVID. Would I be right in saying you're not very happy with some of these press reports? You think the press has been, what is the right word, a little irresponsible? Is that the correct word?
No, that's a good question. See, I have managed the media relations for the army for a couple of years. I have seen a lot of these media houses, the way they report. They are genuine. I mean, since this, they report it because they feel it is genuine. But their feeling that it is genuine is the thing that I need to question. I have not for a moment questioned their patriotism or anything else. I am sure every Indian has India in his mind and he reports accordingly. But what actually leads to these things is, one is competition. Two, like you said, the information they keep gleaming from here, there, etc., and try to put some sense into it. And in the process of doing that they become speculative. So that is the point I was trying to say. It is not to blame anybody or a media or anything like that, but they do their job. I'm sure they are equally patriotic as any one of us.
My last question, and this time it's not a report, it's a fear that has been expressed by analysts. I believe the two are Praveen Soni and Ghazala Wahab. They worry in their new book that the developments we are seeing in Ladakh could lead to Ladakh becoming the arena of a two-front war, that we could have a joint Pakistan-China attack in the Ladakh region against India. Is that a fear somewhere at the back of your mind?
See, having served in the army and having served on the Chinese border, this two-front war is something which has been discussed even in previous almost about 10 to 12 years. We have been reading it even in the media. So why is it now worrying anybody? Please look at the statement which our chiefs have made earlier on this. That will give a clear indication as to where we stand on this. So anybody trying to say that two-front war will come, China, Pakistan, etc., I'm sure people in the know of things, people who can handle this, have already calculated these issues and they are actually worked on this. So to that extent, I'm not wanting to comment on what somebody wrote. That is up to them to write what they want to write. But please understand that these things have been considered for a very long time, and I'm sure people in the know do the things which are required to be done.
General Narasimhan, thank you very much for this interview, in particular for the candor with which you spoke and the clarity with which you explained what you believe is the actual truth in Galwan, in Depsang, in Pangong Lake. For many, this will be eye-opening because at the moment we've only had press reports to rely on. This is the first time someone who in a very credible sense is from within the government, you're a member of the National Security Advisory Board, is actually giving us what you believe is the truth. I'm very grateful.
But National Security Advisory Board is not part of the government. You should know that.
But most people believe it is very close to that.
That's up to you.
But close to.
That's up to you to believe me.
And your laugh, I think, conveys the modesty that I think is one of your winning qualities. Thank you very much for this interview, General Narasimhan. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Mr. Karan.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.